Hello, and welcome to Board Game Tutorials. I'm Cymrych Hughs from Blue Hand Gamers, and today we'll be competing for control of the Black Rose Lodge by becoming the next Grandmaster in Black Rose Wars. Alright, before we get started, we're going to do a quick setup. Now, starting from the first player now chooses a school of magic. Rebecca's preferred school of magic is necromancy. So she's going to start the game choosing necromancy. You'll take the whole deck and the necromancy card, because on the back it gives you two possible choices of grimoires. This will tell you how much of what spell to take for your personal grimoire. So I will go through and find just whatever this top one is for purposes of learning. Now we will take one of her custom spells as well and add that to her grimoire. This will get added to this section of your player board. Now we can shuffle this back up. Now you will no longer use the back of this card. So you can place this here. Now once a player has chosen a school of magic, no other player is allowed to choose that school. But for Nero, we're just going to go with what his preferred school is, and that's destruction. So same thing, we're just going to pick whatever's on top. And then again, we will take one of his custom spells as well and add that to his grimoire. Next, we'll make sure to shuffle up all of the schools that did not get used. And when choosing a spell, you can choose the top or the bottom. And it doesn't matter how you orient it, whether it's you want to use the top so you flip it to the side and the top is what spell you want to use, or if you want to tell everybody to flip long ways. But always make sure you know what side you're flipping to, because whatever you flip to is the spell you play. Alright, the game round is divided into 6 phases. The first phase is the Black Rose phase. At the very beginning of the Black Rose phase, whoever has the crown token is immediately considered the first player for the rest of the game round. Also, if anybody has a quest card that they do not want, depending on what phase of the moon you're on, such as first, second, or full, being 1, 2, and 3. If you want to discard your quest card you have in your hand, you can discard that face up here. But whatever card you have in your hand that you discard equals 1, 2, or 3 power for the Black Rose Lodge. After discarding quests, whoever's in last place, position-wise in turn order, which in this case would be Nero, will flip and resolve an event card. After you have resolved everything that the event says, you also take into effect the bottom left side of the card says to add 2 Black Rose power, and it will indicate that you put this in the leftmost section of the events. Now this effect will stay active for as long as this event card is on the board. Now lastly, during the Black Rose phase, if you have no quests in your hand, in player order you're allowed to choose a new quest. Now at any time this quest becomes complete, you'll announce it and gain whatever power is listed in the bottom right. Now the second phase is the study phase. Players will draw the top 2 cards from the top of their grimoire and set those aside. And in turn order, players will choose 4 cards from any school they want. It does not have to be the same school, it could be 4 different schools. Now out of these 4 cards, you'll read through the top and bottom of each card and see which ones you like the most. So we'll say, I'll take these 2. These 2 will then get added to the other 2 cards that I've set aside for my Grimoire. Now the next player will go. That's not normally how you would discard. You would probably have another separate pile off to the side, but for learning purposes, this is what we're going to do. Next up is the 3rd phase, the preparation phase. In this case, a player can look through their hand. You can now choose where to place your spells. You have to think ahead. What's your enemy going to do? What are you going to do? How are you going to act? And you place your spells in a very specific order. I have plans for this one, so I'm going to put that in my quick spell slot. Again, make sure you remember what way you're orienting your spells. Now when placing your spells, you don't have to place all 4. You can save some in your hand, but you have to have 1 quick spell and you have to have 1 standard spell. Phase 4, we have the action phase, starting with whoever the first player is, which, remember, doesn't mean whoever has the crown token is the first player. That only takes effect at the very beginning of the Black Rose phase. But since they had the crown, they are, in fact, the first player. So you have several options. You have the action token. Now the action token allows you to move whatever your movement is listed on your character board and activate a room. Or you can attack wherever you are, then activate a room. When you make an attack, it also goes based off of what's listed on your player board. And when you're in the mage's cells, you're immune to effects. During the action phase, you take at least 1 action. You can go up to 2. You can only play 1. It's up to you. But if you have actions to take, you have to use 1. We have the action tokens. You have a quick spell. You have a standard spell. And then you have a discard. You can take any combination of them except for standard spells. You cannot play 2 standard spells in 1 round. Or, well, in 1 turn. What I'm going to do is discard 1 unused spell that I didn't really need in order to move 1 space. Because when you're in a mage's cell, your action has to be move away from that cell. I will also flip my physical action token in order to move 2 spaces. We're going to go to the garden. Now in the garden, the effect is listed here. It says you can place 1 instability token either in this room or in an adjacent room. So what that means is we take one of our damage counters and we place it on this room. Since that was 2 actions, Rebecca's turn is done. Next we have Nero. So what he's going to do is he's going to use his physical action token and activate a room to come here to the Forge. Now the Forge's ability allows you to move 1 space and make a basic attack. He's going to do that, using his physical action token, allowing him to activate a room that he landed on. He's going to use the Forge's ability to move 1 space and do a basic combat of 2 damage right to Rebecca. So since he did 2 damage, he will add 2 of his colors to Rebecca's health bar. So next, he's going to hit her with this fireball. Based on the way it was oriented, it says inflict 3 damage on each model in the target room. Target's protection spells may not be triggered. Now, the spell he played has an instability symbol in the center. What that means is he'll also add an instability to that room. Now that he played 2 actions, it's now Rebecca's turn again. She's going to, again, use a physical action and activate a room, coming down to the cemetery, where she can summon a Lunchneck. Now, what that means is we have these tiny little colored pips in the shape of roses. Go to your evocations, and you'll find that evocation. On one side it shows a nice little picture of it, and on the other side it shows their stats. Next we'll find the evocation token. Now I have the cardboard cutouts because this is the base game. Now, you place the rose inside, indicating that he is number 1 evocation, because you can have multiple of the same evocation. Next, for her second action, I'm going to play Obscurity's Grasp. This says you can shift one of your undead into a room with at least 1 mage. It may then make an attack. So we shift him, who is undead, listed as such underneath his name, and he makes a basic attack, which in this case is 2. Since that evocation is under your control, the damage is yours. Nero's turn. He looks at some of his abilities. He thinks, yeah, Bone Armor is a good one. So this is how you play a protection spell. You simply say, I'm activating a protection spell, and to symbolize that it is activated, this token is 2-sided, with a trap symbol and a protection symbol. Simply put the protection symbol on the protection spell. Now traps and protection spells have triggers. In this case, it specifically said, when you suffer damage. So the next time Nero suffers damage, he'll say, wait, you're triggering my protection spell. He's going to use an action token to move 2 spaces and activate this room. Now the sacrificial altar means you can do 1 damage to any target. So using that, he then does 1 damage to Rebecca. Alright, now it's Rebecca's turn again, since he did his 2. Her next ability is a combat spell that targets a single model within 1 space. The symbol of the target determines what the target itself is. If it's a picture of a face, that means yourself. If it looks like a meeple or like a single person, that means 1 single target / model. And then the number next to it indicates how many spaces away, whether it be 0, 1, or 2, or 3. If there's an asterisk, it's got special or could be anywhere. And then lastly, the hexagon symbol, which means area. It could be any number of models as long as it's within that area. And again, a number next to that means areas away. Unfortunately, this isn't going to do any good because Nero's 2 spaces away. She's going to have to discard this in order to move 1 space. And then lastly, she'll use her last one, spell. Inflict 2 damage on each model in the target room, then convert instability in that room. What this is going to do is 2 damage to him. It's got a range of within 2 areas. He's only 1 away. So we're going to do that 2 damage. Now when you see the instability symbol with arrows around it, that means, let's say Nero had caused some instability in here. This spell allows Rebecca to convert 3 instability in that room, meaning you knock his instability out of there and put 2 of your own in there. And that's about all she can do. Nero has his next ability, Ring of Fire. Inflict 2 damage on each model in each adjacent room. It's got a 0 range, but the wording specifically says adjacent rooms. Now it's got an instability symbol, so we're going to throw that instability on the room he is on. Also, the 2 damage he inflicted, because he's affecting all adjacent rooms. Since he has the second action, he will play. Now both characters have used all of their available actions. Her destruction spell did in fact do 2 damage to him. So what would have happened is, he would have said, hey, wait a moment, I have a protection spell active. You would read it off. When you suffer damage, you may inflict the same damage on that which inflicted it on you. Now you'll play this face up, but since she did damage to him, his spell is now returning 2 of that damage to her. For purposes of training, tutorial, let's say she only had 2 health left and he used that spell. That protection spell inflicted 2 damage to her. What's going to happen is, she's maxed out on damage. Nero was the sole damage dealer to Rebecca. So since he did the killing blow, he gets a Rebecca trophy. You also score points immediately. Since he did the sole amount of damage to Rebecca, he gains 5 power. If you are the most amount of damage, you gain 4 power. The second most amount of damage, you gain 2 power. And then if anybody else has participated in doing damage, they only gain 1. But since he did all the damage, he will immediately gain 5 more power. Now that put us over the second moon. That means immediately you will swap out for your second moon dex, for your quests, and your events. And all players will then take an additional custom spell and put it in their hand. Now since Rebecca was defeated, she will immediately get returned back to her mage's cell. Next is the evocation phase, phase 5. In this case, all players will activate their evocations. Rebecca's the only one that has one, and it'll go by turn order. This evocation card says he gets to move 2 spaces, 1, 2, do a basic damage of 2, so we'll throw another 2 damage on Nero. After all evocations have gone, it's now cleanup phase, phase 6. At this point, you discard all of your used spells. Now I have to clarify, there are trap spells. They work very similar to protection. They will tell you specifically how they're triggered. If you cast a trap spell, but did not trigger it, you are allowed to pick it up and put it right back into your hand to be used again. You will also reflip your action tokens. Now, after you refresh your tokens, you remove any used forgotten spells from the game. Now we can refresh all of the room's tokens. Next, we check for any rooms that have full instability. Would you look at that? We have one. So since Nero has the most instability here, he will gain this destroyed room token. Now any characters or models that are currently in this room, nothing happens to them. They're still there. This room is just no longer usable. So we'll flip it upside down so that the hollowed out little sections are no longer there. And now that sacrificial altar has no abilities to be used. And the last part of cleanup phase is to check to see if any player has reached 30 power, in which case the game will end. And we'll go through all of our end game scoring. Throughout the course of the game, you flip new events. Black Rose Lodge gains power. If at any time an event is discarded, they will also gain more power. Events give power to Black Rose Lodge when they come in and when they leave. So at endgame, you have special scoring. You have your score on the power board, and our first section of bonus points are quests. So Rebecca sees she has 3 completed quests. Nero also has 3 completed quests. Now normally, whoever has the first large amount of quests completed gains 6 points. Second place gets 3, and anyone else who participated only gets 1. However, for scoring, ties mean you get that amount of points, but one less. So since these two both tied for first, instead of 6, they will both get 5. Now on the back of your power token is the same token, but it says plus 30. It allows you to wrap around the board. Since Rebecca was at 30 and she gains 5 more, we'll flip that to the 30 and put it on 5. Nero, however, is only at 21 right now, so we only move him up to 26. Next are trophies. Count out how many trophies from other players you've killed. In this case, Nero's defeated Rebecca 3 times. Rebecca's only defeated Nero twice. First player gets 4 points, second player gets 2 points. Your third step are destroyed rooms. You take your destroyed rooms, flip them over, and whatever the power at the bottom says, in this case the garden, will give Rebecca 2 points. Nero has the sacrificial altar and the crypt, both scoring him 6 points altogether. So we'll flip him over to 30. He's right on her tail. And then the fourth and final is the crown. Whoever the crown bearer is gets 1 point. And at this point, this would be the end of the game. Rebecca would win with 40 points. Nero has 36, and Black Rose Lodge only had 27. Well, that's pretty much the game. In my experience, the Black Rose Lodge actually has a really good opportunity to win. Those events really start adding up power quickly. And then with every new phase of the moon, those events could be worth more and more power. You get power when it becomes in play. You get more power when it is discarded. So it leaves players lagging behind. So you really have to push for kills, for completing quests. Really adds to the strategy. Also, the variety behind the game, all those different spell schools, the combos you can string together, but none of it is promised. Your Grimoire is random. Every time you play the game, your spells become more and more random. There's so many different options. Divination, conspiracy, necromancy. I'm a big necromancy fan when it comes to games like this. My buddy Colron hates it. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the how to play video. I hope I gave you a basic understanding of how to play the game. And if you want to learn more, we're going to be hosting a playthrough video at a later time. Come and join us then. Thanks for coming by.